Great. So does it start automatically at 7?
Yep. I'd probably give it like 20 seconds to thought, but then it should be good.
Do some push-ups.
Stop that. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2. Waiting for the green light. David, as soon as you give me the green light, a thumbs up, a smoke signal, we'll go. We're good? Welcome everybody out there on live stream. You're out there, right? Welcome to session 4. Hope you're tuning in. Tonight's information. Okay. We won't be super long like we were last week. Not at all. We will not be super long. However, the content is essential, can change your future, actually. And I'm really, the way I think of it is this. It has the potential to change how many people show up at your funeral. Will it be a handful, or will it be a packed house? I really am thinking of it in those terms. However, disclaimer to the ladies. Disclaimer to all the ladies, all the wives out there. Here's what I'm asking of you. Please, don't use this information tonight to bury your husband for the next 1,000 years. I'm not just trying to give wives ammunition. Okay, would that be helpful? No. No, it would not. So you'll see what I mean, because again, the majority of this is coming from Gottman, and he has observed marriage after marriage after marriage, and through statistical analysis, what the numbers reflect is there's certain thing we're going to talk about tonight that men struggle with. Now my wife is intrigued, sitting here in the front row. So there's that. Also, quick announcement. By way of the survey, there was overwhelming majority that you guys want to meet for that 9th week for group discussion. I would love if you guys can take the time to be here, because I really want to hear from you, and I want to be quiet that night and just listen. You can express anything, whether it's critique or ideas, pushback, concerns, testimonies, whatever you have, I want to hear it. So this course is going to end on March 2nd, so that 9th week would be March 9th, okay? All right, let's get to work. We're at session 4. Hope you're staying up with the homework, the exercises. Of course, by now you found out how much time they take, but again, I keep saying this, you're going to get out what you put in. And healing takes work. It really does. So if you're just waiting around for change to happen, change doesn't happen that way as far as positive change. Okay, here we go. Principle 4 is let your partner influence you. Let and allow your partner to influence you. Now, if you're single, don't date, get engaged, or marry someone that you don't respect enough to allow their opinion and perspective to influence you. Don't do it. But before we get going, here's a quick review just to make sure, just one review question. What is the definition we said in previous weeks, definition 2, cherishing? What does it mean to cherish someone? Giving you a few seconds to think. What is the definition of cherish? Cherish is this, according to Gottman. Cherishing is a habit of mind in which you maximize the positive qualities of your spouse and minimize the negative ones. Meaning you are grateful for what you do have instead of resentful for what you don't. And so in those moment-by-moment choices that we make, we choose to focus on the positive. You know, I had a enlightening moment, probably thanks to Gottman, where I was trying to go even deeper. Why is it my wife leaves all the lights on? And she's looking at me like she's not aware of this. oh my goodness, she's saying she turns them off. It's so not true. It's just not. And then why does she leave glasses all around the house? You know what I mean? Which is my little game. And winning the game means I get enough glasses around the house to do a dishwasher load, which is great. So here it is. She grew up in this huge family, and there's so much activity, and so many things happening, so many people running around, and believe me, I know because I've been there, that they would set a glass down, and then someone would call them away, and that happened so much that just became the habit. And why would she leave the lights on? Well, why? Because there's so many people in the house, you're never the last one out of the room. Someone else is going to come into. So of course, those became habits in her life. And so to me now, seeing that, it becomes endearing to me, and I can cherish her because I see it in its context instead of thinking, don't you know the electric bill is going to go up? And don't you care that I have to pick up after you? Like, no. I can choose to see it a completely different way and actually enjoy serving my wife and my family that way. And I just kind of relish that, just getting to know my wife on that level. Now, that's my analysis. I haven't checked it with my wife. Do you agree or disagree with my analysis? Okay, we'll talk later, but she seems to agree. All right, so cherishing. Choose to cherish. You know what? Do you want to stay married? Do you want to stay in a marriage you actually enjoy? Then choose to cherish. Okay, here we go. Principle 4, let your partner influence you. Key concepts from chapter 7, principle 4. So I just kind of want to line these up briefly. This is all the content, the key concepts, bullet points from the chapter, and then I want to elaborate a little bit because I don't want you to miss it. Again, we won't be here long. Here they are. Husbands must learn to let their wife's feelings and opinions influence them in decision making. Husbands must share power with their wife as an essential means of honoring and respecting them. And this will strengthen your friendship. Anything less, and the husband has become a, what? My wife says dictator. Gottman says bully. Bully. If you don't honor and respect your wife by allowing her opinions and feelings and perspective into your decision-making process, you're a bully. That was really good rebuke for me. I don't want to be a bully, do you? Further, husbands should not think they are, here it is, this is a good one for us church people. They should not think that they are justified in being a bully by any form of religious belief system. You may believe that the husband is to be the head of the house, but that is no excuse for being a tyrant and a bully, and in reality is a form of abuse. Just that is what it is. So again, we don't want to be abusers, we don't want to be tyrants, we don't want to be bullies, so we have to, husbands, import our wife's perspective into our decision-making process. And so, okay, second and quick disclaimer for tonight. We're going to talk a lot about men, but all these principles are equally true for women. So why are we going to talk about men? So as we go, ladies, just remember, this is not a bunch of, elbow in the gut moments for tonight. It's also, we always want to look and say, okay, how am I contributing to the situation? It is possible, as Gottman says, for women to, should I say, be guilty of these patterns of behavior as well. So just letting you know that. While it is equally important for a wife to honor and respect her husband, Gottman has found that in most marriages, even unstable ones, the majority of wives, guess what? They already do that. What? They already do it. I'll read it again. While it is equally important for a wife to honor and respect her husband, Gottman has found that in most marriages, even unstable ones, the majority of wives already do that. Women tend to be more oriented toward discussing and understanding feelings than men. Discussing and understanding feelings more than men. And And men should seek to learn from their wife on how to be, and this is a big one for tonight, we're going to flesh it out, emotionally intelligent. Emotionally intelligent. And Gottman's saying we can learn from our wife on that. Now, there's a reason why this is so. And to me, it's fascinating, and I hope it resonates with you. We're going to go through that in a moment. Husbands must learn to listen to their wife's opinions and not only understand them, but also, here's the hard part, maybe, but also the emotions and feelings behind them. Did you catch that? Let me say it again. Husbands must learn to listen to their wife's opinions and not only understand them, but also the emotions and feelings behind them. And I think here's where most men says, my wife's a mystery. You know, women are mysterious. You can never understand them. Our job as husbands is to decode our wife. And so if we're really going to do that, we not only have to understand what their opinion is and their perspective that led them to that opinion, but also the emotions and feelings behind that perspective that led to that opinion. It's a package deal. Here we go. So he entitles this subsection, Anything You Say, Dear. And apparently Gottman was parodied on Saturday Night Live and Bill Maher and I think one other show. But Gottman was saying in his book, yeah, they didn't get it right. It was misrepresentation. So anything you say, dear, is that what Gottman's going to be arguing? That, hey, man, if you want to have a good marriage, you just have to learn to say anything you want, dear. Anything you say, whatever you say is right. That is not what Gottman's doing, okay? When responding to negativity in communication to her husband, a wife will usually, pay attention, will usually either ratchet the negativity down or match the level of negativity, but rarely escalate it. When a wife is responding to some form or expression of negativity from her husband, she will usually either ratchet the negativity down or match the level of negativity, but rarely escalate it. Have you found this to be true? I'm pretty sure it's true in my marriage. And my wife is like, oh yeah, definitely. Now, why is that? And what do I even mean? So here's an example of ratcheting down. A husband says, you're not listening to me. Wife responds by ratcheting it down. Sorry, I'm listening now. Do you see how that response kind of took down the tension a little bit? Or at least matching, she might say something like, I'm finding it hard to listen to you. But what she hasn't done is ratchet up the negativity. Husbands, on the other hand, more often than not, escalate their wife's negativity 65% of the time, to be exact, according to Gottman. And they will do so by trotting out one of the four horsemen. Can you believe that? Gottman's exposing us, men. Husbands, on the other hand, more often than not, escalate the wife's negativity. And they do so by charting out one of the four horsemen. So if the wife of one of these men said, you're not listening to me, the husband would either ignore her, stonewall, become defensive, oh yes I am, criticize, I don't listen because what you say never makes any sense. Or express contempt. Listen, why waste my time? Ouch. So using one of the four horsemen to escalate a conflict is a telltale sign that a man is resisting his wife's influence. Now, if you were to put together all that Gottman said, and he doesn't say this in his book, but you can kind of read between the lines, you could conclude this from Gottman. Using one of the four horsemen to escalate a conflict is a telltale sign that a man is emotionally unintelligent. Rather than acknowledge his wife's feelings, this kind of husband is using the four horsemen to do what? Drown her out and obliterate her point of view. Now, obliterate her point of view, I think I can resonate with that? But what I tell myself I'm doing is I'm using logic. I'm just being rational. She's being emotional. And I don't know why she can't understand that she's already lost the argument because, I've given her the ultimate counter argument that is incontrovertible. No, actually what I'm doing is I'm seeking to obliterate her point of view. Her point of view still matters. In spite of all that self-justification that I just told myself, which makes a lot of sense in the moment, it's totally disrespecting her and not honoring her. However, a wife can use, this is interesting, so a wife can use one of the four horsemen, except for contempt, and not harm the marriage. What? A wife is able to use one of the four horsemen besides contempt and not harm the marriage, and it is likely so because it's an attempt to balance the power between spouses due to the husband's dominance. I hope you caught that. Got to keep moving. So that made sense to me as well. All of this means that there is an asymmetry. Okay? So symmetrical, means they're the same on both sides. So what Gottman's saying is, in a marriage, there's an asymmetry. It's not balanced on both sides in certain ways. Okay, we're not talking about people's worth or value. There's an asymmetry in marriage. Also, and we're going to get into that, also an overly compliant wife who doesn't feel empowered to ever reject her spouse's influence would likely become depressed, which is detrimental to both her health and the relationship. So the data shows that men are far more likely to resort to the four horsemen in order to escalate a conflict, which places their marriage at risk. Therefore, husbands must be particularly vigilant in accepting their wife's influence during both decision-making and times of conflict. So because that's our natural tendency, men, we have to respond to that because we're aware of it now. Practice self-awareness. We have to respond to it by being vigilant to making sure our wife is included in our decision-making and her perspective is heard during times of conflict. The wives of men who accept their influence are far less likely to be harsh with their husbands when broaching a difficult marital topic, increasing the odds that the marriage will thrive. Did you catch that? There's so many benefits. Gottman's listing one of them. So if you're taking your wife's opinion, perspective, emotion, and feelings into account in decision making and in times of conflict, guess what? She is far less likely to be harsh with her husband when difficult marital topics come up. Now, isn't that a wonderful thing? Because, it's like you say, well, my wife has all these harsh startups. Well, I feel like, to see that properly, like a wife suiting up in her armor and feels like she's having to go to battle because we make it so difficult for them to be heard sometimes. So it comes out as harsh. Now, as far as the harshness and, couching our words and our tone through negativity, we're going to talk about that briefly coming up. So stay with us. The wives of men. Okay, so here's how it usually goes. Here's the play-by-play. So the wife will become negative, i.e., I'm really upset with you. A straightforward complaint. I'm really upset with you, the wife says. He responds by escalating the conflict by making a harsh complaint of his own and or responding by saying he will make her original complaint even worse. Oh, you're mad that I'm working late on Friday because your mother-in-law's coming in town? I'm going to work through the whole weekend too. I won't even be there the whole time she's here. Do you see how that just escalated? Which is defensiveness and also belligerence. We get belligerent with our wives. The wife becomes furious and the husband becomes flooded, which leads to stonewall. There's the play-by-play. So accepting influence doesn't mean never expressing negative emotions towards your spouse. Accepting influence doesn't mean you never have to, no one's ever able to express negative emotions toward their spouse. Marriages can survive plenty of flashes of anger, complaints, and even criticisms. Trying to suppress negative feelings isn't good for a marriage. The problem comes when husbands respond to their wife's negative feelings by escalating the conflict using the four horsemen. So if we're in the habit of escalating, and now, man, Gottman doesn't get into this just yet, but you have to ask yourself, why am I escalating it? Why do I feel so threatened that I'm seeing my wife as an opponent, as an enemy, and I'm going to war against her in this moment? Why do you... Because men like to blow things up, Rebecca says. Well, because you feel a lack of respect. That's the short answer. And that's a soul need for a man, I would argue. But we got to keep moving. So just up to this point, what we need to know is, men, you have a tendency to escalate the situation, and it's unnecessary. And if you continue to do that, escalate the negativity, the conflict, with the four horsemen, your marriage is in a bad way, and it's going to get worse. Okay? Next, moving on. What husbands can learn from their wives. What husbands can learn from their wives. Truth. Women tend to be more oriented towards discussing and understanding feelings than are men. Women are better at discussing and understanding feelings. True or false? Do you guys believe that? You buy into that? So, Gottman's going to get into some of the why, and hopefully this will resonate with you. You can buy into this. While there are exceptions to this rule, there are exceptions. Usually, just usually, women are more emotionally intelligent than their husbands. And Gottman thinks that the reason is biological. So, this kind of brings us to the nature versus nurture question. Were they born that way, or were they conditioned to be that way? Well, Gottman's response is, because this is cross-cultural, it's most likely biological. Because obviously we assume that the conditioning in all these cultures around the world are diverse. So if you get a similarity, it points in the direction of being in nature, not nurture. That is to say, biological reason why women seem to be more emotionally intelligent than the men. So for instance, going back to the playground. For instance, when boys and girls play games together, for the boys, it's all about winning. And for the girls, it's all about feelings and the connection they have with the other players. So boys, I want to win this, competitive spirit. Girls, the connection she has with the other players. Girls are getting, because that's true, girls are getting a head start in understanding social interactions, emotions, and feelings, which are essential to understand for a healthy marriage. A boy's experience at playing cooperatively and quickly getting past conflict will be an asset later in the boardroom or on the construction site, but it will be a liability in a marriage. It comes at the expense of understanding the emotion behind his wife's perspectives. So here, Gottman is pointing out that not only do men need to understand their wife's perspective, again, but also the underlying emotions of that perspective. So you remember last week how we talked about, we don't want to use the why question. We want to use other open-ended questions, exploratory questions, and Gottman gave a whole list of those so we can draw out not only the what, but how so? How is it that you feel that way? What brings you to that conclusion? I want to understand where you're coming from. All those type things. A boy's experience at playing, we're already there. So here he goes on. 35% of preschool best friendships are between boys and girls, okay? 35% when you're in play school, preschool age, your best friend is between boys and girls. But by age 7, that percentage plummets to virtually 0. From then till puberty, the sexes will have little or nothing to do with each other. And this is so in every culture. Even at a young age, 1.5 years old, boys will accept influence only from other boys when they play, whereas girls accept influence equally from girls or boys. At around ages 5 to 7, girls become fed up with the state of affairs and stop wanting to play with boys. From that age until puberty, our culture, and virtually all others, offers no formal structure for ensuring that boys and girls continue to interact. And Gottman thinks, well, it would be really good for boys to have some kind of structure where they continue to interact with girls so that boys can learn from the girls' emotional intelligence. Quick side note. This is partly why we say that men listen to men, meaning it is essential that every man have healthy relationships with older, wiser men who can give them good counsel and hold them accountable to being a good man. So that's a principle we like to use and refer to often here, because if what Gottman is saying is true with reference to, our biological nature and how things happen in our childhood, then we want to harness that reality and use it to the advantage of everyone. So that's why I tell men, and I tell their wife, I was like, the men listen to men. If he won't listen to you, get him around other men that he respects. And men should always be fostering these relationships with older, wiser men. We need each other in our lives, okay? Mark it down. Moving forward, and again, we're almost done here, so stay engaged. Next, emotionally intelligent husbands. So about 35% of the men Gottman has studied are emotionally intelligent, only 35%. And an emotionally intelligent husband honors and respects his wife and is open to learning more about emotions from her. He will come to understand, and this is really critical, he will come to understand her world and those of his children and friends. He may not express emotions in the same way as his wife, but he will learn how to better connect with her emotionally. As he does so, he'll make choices that show he esteems her. When she needs to talk, this is a big one, when she needs to talk, he'll turn off the basketball game and listen. He will choose us over me. Basketball game's on, I'm engaged, my wife comes into the room, she clearly needs some attention, she has a bid for connection. I recognize it for what it is. She takes precedence, priority over the basketball game. Basketball game's off. I gave her my full focus and attention. The result is she feels a connection with me, she feels loved, and our marriage is strengthened. Now, I'm going to talk about in a moment the alternative response and why we have it. So here is one of the most important things we're going to say tonight, so bear with me. And here's what I call it from Gottman. I call it this, a tale of two kinds of husbands. A quick description of two different kinds of husbands. And here is where I'm referring to this idea, just to get us thinking, not to be morbid, about, have you thought about how many people are going to show up at your funeral? Have you thought about what your legacy is going to be? So, in order to flesh that out, let's describe two different kinds of husbands. Husband number one. Emotionally intelligent husbands value family over career. And they follow the first three principles by doing the following things. He makes a detailed map of his wife's world. He keeps in touch with his admiration and fondness for her. And he communicates it by turning toward her in his daily actions. My wife will come into my office, and as I said, my office is facing directly the window, and she'll want to talk about something, and it's not enough. I say, okay, go ahead, I'm listening. It is not enough for me to say, go ahead, I'm listening, as I'm facing my computer. I've learned this, she really needs me to pick up my chair and turn it around and face her. Not 90 degrees won't cut it. She wants 180 degrees. And Gottman is helping me to understand why. He turns off the basketball game. So he's familiar with this. I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. So this benefits not only his marriage, but his, guess what? Children as well. Children as well. Research shows that a husband who can accept influence from his wife also tends to be, guess what? An outstanding father. Those two things go hand in hand. And here it is. He's familiar with his children's world, including their friends and their fears. So, a good husband and a good father is familiar with the world that his wife and children live in. Their friends, their fears. He's making a love map for all these people. He's making a connection with all them. Now, what's the opposite of that? So we're talking about a father who, when the children need attention, he gives them full attention. When wife needs attention, he gives her full focus. What is the opposite of that? A man who's simply known as grunting. He's like, huh? And you're like Gottman was saying last week, the idea of he just hides behind the newspaper. That's the only interaction he has with his family. And Gottman was saying that, or he hides behind his electronic device, whatever that might be. But how does all that end? Because he is not afraid of emotions, he teaches his children to respect their own feelings and themselves. And he turns off the basketball game for them too, because he wants them to remember him as having had time for them. Having a happy family base makes it possible for him to create and work effectively. Because he is so connected to his wife, she will come to him not only when she is troubled, but also when she's delighted. His children will run to find him every time they are excited. The people who matter most to him will care about him when he lives and lament his demise. The people he cares about most, who matter the most, will care about him when he lives and lament his demise. Husband number 2. The other kind of husband and father is a very sad story. He responds to the loss of male entitlement with righteous indignation or a sense of victimization. He may become more authoritarian or withdraw into a lonely shell, protecting what little he has left. He does not give others very much honor and respect because he is engaged in a search for the honor and respect he thinks is his due. So busy about getting the respect and honor that I know I deserve that he's oblivious to the idea that he's missing all the opportunities to honor and respect others. He will not accept his wife's influence because he fears any further loss of power. And because he will not accept influence, he will not have very much influence. Because he will not accept influence, he will not have very much influence. The consequence is that no one will care much about him while he lives, nor mourn him when he dies. That's sad, isn't it? So, I guess in my life, the saddest expression I've seen of this, and I hope I'm not going too far, trying to be objective here. The saddest expression I've seen of this is in the many times we've gone to nursing homes, and I often ask people, where's your family? How often do you get visits? Trying to direct them to something that we can, that will make them, happy, encourage them, a fond memory. And you know what the overwhelming response I get from the people in the nursing home is? They never come. I don't get any visits. And so my first thought is, well, they must live very far away then, right? And there's like, no, they live in the same city we're in now. In fact, they're like 2 miles down the road. And I just wonder, and I'm not saying there's only one answer to that scenario. I'm sure there's multiple reasons why that would be. But this likely is one of them. It's one possibility. It just reminds me of that song, When You Coming Home, Dad? I don't know when. And then it turns into, When You Coming Home, Son? I don't know when. I'm sure we'll get together then. It reciprocates. So it's like we're reaping what we've sown. And we're going to reap positively or we're going to reap negatively. So again, we need to have that long-term perspective. And that's why I brought up the funeral and thinking about what our legacy is going to be. So going back now to the idea of turning off the basketball game, when our me time is interrupted, we get angry, don't we, men? Because our mission to do what we want to do feels blocked. And again, Gottman mentioned it again last week, the idea of we get angry when we feel blocked. And that's really helpful because that word blocked, it allows me to think through what's being blocked. Okay, and then that brings another question in my exploration of why I'm feeling what I'm feeling, because I struggle with that. Why do I care so much that that thing is being blocked? Why does it matter so much to me? And then I could even go further. So I'm watching a basketball game. It's interrupted. I get angry because I feel like my mission of seeing the basketball game that I really care about is being blocked. And then I take that out on the people around me. In order to be good husbands and fathers, we have to, and this is critical for tonight, we have to learn to see these situations for what they really are. Opportunities to really connect with our wife and our children. And it's these times of connection, when you made your wife and children a priority, that are remembered after we're gone. Becoming deeply familiar with our wife's world, fears, feelings, and emotions, our children's world, fears, feelings, and emotions, and then going beyond our family to others is how our life is out in our life is what makes the difference on how many people will show up at our funeral. And so here's the thing. I just want to encourage everyone to take this even further. This is how you go deep with people out there in the world. And I'm not trying to say you need 100 friends, but a lot of people I've encountered need more friends. Like, for instance, people come in here asking for gas money, and it's like, where's your family, where's your friends? And I get the answer a lot. I don't have any. There's no one I can call. And that breaks my heart. And it's like, well, let this be a wake-up call, but it takes work and intentionality. And so if we're learning to do this with our wife, to have a detailed love map, to understand her emotions and feelings, to focus on her, be a good listener, and not just always grasping for our own honor and respect that we feel is our due. We're focusing on the other person, and then we let that flow out into doing the same thing for our children. You think about what kind of an environment your child's going to grow up in. It's going to be amazing. And then what if we took that even further into the people out in our life? And then when I've been at funerals where it's a packed house, everybody wants a chance to get on the mic to talk about how this person influenced them positively for the good and how they'll never forget it. Now, Gottman does reference in a footnote at the bottom of that page. He says he wrote a book with Declare entitled Raising an Emotionally Intelligent Child. Raising an emotionally intelligent child. So if you want Gottman, if what he's been giving us is helpful for you, you might want to see what he has to say on parenting. And he has other books on the topic as well, but that's the one he mentions, Raising an Emotionally Intelligent Child. And I think that's a really important topic. Last topic, and then we are done. Learning to yield. Learning to yield. Men, we have to learn to be submissive. Doesn't the Bible say wives are to submit to their husbands? But here's the thing. We're supposed to submit to Christ. And if we're going to submit to Christ and love and cherish our wife, it's going to mean at times we submit to her. If you just flesh that out. Otherwise, we're selfish bullies all the time. Learning to yield. Accepting influence is an attitude, but it's also a skill that you can hone if you pay attention to how you relate to your spouse. When you have a conflict, The key is to be willing to compromise. You do this, this is critical here, you do this by searching through your spouse's request for something you can agree to. We often like to do the opposite. We focus on the one thing we hate or can't stand or disagree with, and we want to talk about that. But you start out, because you want to compromise, you do this by searching through your spouse's request for something you can agree to. No, and you're going to see that in the exercises. No matter how negative you envision your partner as sounding, this is again more of what we had last week. No matter, hear this, please, and we got to get in this habit. It's like going to the gym. We got to build this into our lives. No matter how negative you envision your partner as sounding, try to view her or his attitude as a way of emphasizing how important this issue is to her. So instead of saying, oh, she's being negative, she's coming to me with a problem, she's attacking me, horsemen, oh, four horsemen, where are you? Oh, there you are, let's go. And we escalate it. We need to see through all that like subterfuge and see for what it really is. It's a bid for connection. Because what was one of the subcategories on the bid for connection? It was a request for support. So in order to do that effectively, and this is a game changer, in order to do that effectively, we've got to see past all the negative expression, because our wives will use negative language, a negative tone of voice, and you might be thinking, this is not what I signed up for on my marriage day when I made those vows. And the way I put it is, I just need one thing from my wife ultimately, I just need her to be sweet to me. When she's not sweet to me, I'm thinking, this is not what I signed up for. But I got to see past all that lack of sweetness. And really, what am I looking for? I'm looking for seeing what the issue is for her and seeing it as, hey, she is merely telling me about something that is very important to her. I don't have to respond to the negativity. I can respond to the underlying thing that she cares about. So, she is merely emphasizing how important the issue is to her. It's not an attack on me. And you might say, well, it sure feels like an attack on me. I know, and we got to become more mature than seeing it that way. It's going to make your life better. It's going to make your wife's life better. It's going to make the atmosphere in your house better. She's merely emphasizing how important the issue is to her. She's not attacking us. In other words, we try to respond to the message or the content, not your spouse's tone of voice. Assume that within that message is a reasonable request with which you could easily agree. Now you think about the stability that would bring into your life. If you got in the habit of seeing past the negative expression, finding the thing you can agree with, and see it as a bid for connection, you don't even have to let your blood pressure raise or the adrenaline start flowing. You don't have to go into fight or flight. It's unnecessary. It's not an attack on me. She's just trying to really let me know, hey, this is important to me. Oh, it's important to her. She needs support right now. I don't have to take it as an attack. I don't even have to get upset. That would just be stability. And you imagine that stability. It is so critical for our children to observe us having that stability. Because when they see us being stable, they feel stable. When my wife is frantic and she can see me respond by being stable, she's going to mirror that stability, so she becomes less frantic. Is that true or false? Totally true, she says. So see past the tone of voice. Respond to the message. Look for the reasonable request. That is game changer. Thank you, Gottman. So you say, so man, right now, we're almost done. Ask yourself, do you struggle with this? Do you struggle with what Gottman's been bringing us tonight? Do you have a tendency to escalate when you're approached with negativity? Do you have a tendency to escalate it? Now, if you do, Gottman's got some advice for you. You say, because what are you going to do about it? Are you going to do something about it? It's like, that Gottman, I knew I didn't like this course. Or you're like, wow, I see what he's saying, and I know that could be a game changer. It could really strengthen my marriage. It could really strengthen my family. I want that. So the first thing we got to do is we got to start realizing, recognizing when it's happening. Now, looking back, even though we're just 4 weeks in, I really love, what I love about Gottman is he's given me a structure to fine-tune my responses in my interactions with my wife. I'm going to tell you about one of those on Sunday morning. So here's the next thing you can do. If you just, call yourself out and you say, yeah, I struggle with this. I would challenge you even right now to turn to your wife next to you and say, I want to let you know I struggle with this. Now, is she going to feel less respect for you or more respect for you if you acknowledge that, admit that to her? Jack, what do you think? More respect or less respect if a man were to admit that he struggles with this escalation problem? More respect, Jack says. 50-50 chance of getting it right. Yes, so Gottman says this. If you're having difficulty accepting influence, you will benefit your marriage enormously by acknowledging this tendency and talking about it with your spouse. Acknowledge it and talk about it with your spouse. Nobody can change old habits overnight. But if you're able to take responsibility for your difficulty with power sharing, that will be a major leap forward. Remember our definition of masculinity. A man takes responsibility, and more responsibility than is actually rightfully his. He takes it on. He bears the weight. He has the broad shoulders. A man takes responsibility, and guess what, man? Taking responsibility is very attractive. Yes or no, Rebecca? Very attractive for a man to take responsibility. You see where I'm going with that, right? Your spouse is likely to feel a great sense of relief and renewed optimism about improving your marriage. The next step is to make your spouse an ally in your crusade to overcome this problem. Ask her to gently point out to you instances where you're being unwittingly domineering, defensive, or disrespectful. Rebecca, would you point out to me where I'm being unwittingly domineering, defensive, or disrespectful? Would you mind? Not right now. No, she offered to do it right now. No, not right now. Maybe later when it's just me and you. See what that looks like? Okay. When you admit stuff like that to your wife, you gain respect because you realize, wow, welcome back to reality. I thought he'd never admit that maybe there is hope for us after all. And it will blow her mind. And you know what? Men and wives, we don't have to place ourselves in a box where we say, oh, I'm the defensive husband. I'm the dominating husband. I'm the domineering husband. I'm the poor me victim husband. We can grow. It is possible to teach an old dog new tricks because the neuroplasticity of our brains. We can, things are hardwired as far as our knee-jerk responses, but those hardwires, they can be adjusted to be hardwired to do something else. It takes time, maintenance, struggle, consistency. But I'll tell you what, you don't have to be that guy. If you have been that guy, that husband, you don't have to stay that way. And wives, when men are admitting their mistakes and failures and communicating their desire to do better in the future, please make it easy for them. And that's why I started this thing out by saying, don't use what you learned tonight as a way to bury your husband for the next 1,000 years. Like as your ultimate trump card every time you get into conflict. See, you're doing what Gottman said. Let's move past that. Last thing I can say from Gottman for tonight, and we will be done. And it's just one sentence. More than 80% of the time, it's the wife who brings up the sticky marital issues. 80% of the time, the wife is the one that brings it up, while the husband tries to avoid discussing them. This isn't a symptom of a troubled marriage. It's true in most happy marriages as well. So I think what Gottman is saying there is it's biological. Okay, so it's just true that wives, they're going to, they're going to bring up the negative stuff. And we might get in the habit of saying, my wife, every time we talk to her, she's bringing up another problem. If we'll turn and face it, see past any negative expression and like really focus on it, things can get better. We don't have to escalate the thing. And you might think you know your wife, but if we'll continue to do that, we might see the sweetness in her that we truly want. And I found that to be true in my life, in my marriage. My wife is reaching a new level in sweetness lately that is absolutely amazing. I'm just kind of scared it's not going to last, it's so good. But I know it will. I know it will. But I'm serious, actually. It has been amazing. That's why I keep saying no other woman in the whole world could ever give me what my wife can give me. Not even close. They can never step to that because it's deeply satisfying to my soul. So on a daily basis, I get to live in the same house with her, so it's an ongoing experience. So that's a beautiful thing. And if you don't have that, you can have that. Someone to grow old with. I was looking back through photos today and just seeing all the experiences my wife and I have had together. And it's a lot. And she's been so faithful all these years. And I have so many reasons to cherish her and appreciate her. And so I want to say this, man. Last thing, by way of my own personal testimony, I really do rely on my wife, her wisdom and advice, and her feminine perspective. So I love to go to her for counsel because she's going to bring up things that my masculine perspective didn't even think about. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. She's been so helpful and nothing but a blessing. My decisions are always, mark it down, always better when I solicit her for advice. And I might not always follow her advice to the T. I may modify it, make a hybrid, or tell her why I'm going to go a different way, but I always profit from it. So I'll just say this to the singles. If you're looking to date someone, find someone you can respect in a way where, hey, they're someone I can go to for advice, for counsel, for wisdom. And because life's going to throw stuff at you. Okay. Men, if you say, well, I'm not that kind of man, I'm not that kind of husband, I'm not that kind of father, here's what you do. Hang out with husbands and fathers who are that kind. Because you will, of necessity, become whoever you hang out with. And so if you're hanging out with men who just co-sign on whatever you're doing that is negative, that Gottman's calling out, say, you know what? I got to intentionally spend time with other men because I want to mirror something different. You don't have to be the man you were. You just have to choose not to be. Okay? Now, I'll just say, the men here, I love the men here. I really do. I'm sure they would love to be those men that could pour into you. So just putting that out there, that invitation. All right. Wish you all the best. The exercises are quite fun. You're going to be given a little quiz to find out how well you guys are doing at this. So please acknowledge that. You may learn some things that you may not know. So do get the exercises done. I already sent you that's Principle 4, Chapter 7. Principle 4, that's Chapter 7. And I sent out the notes earlier, just so you know, if you want to review anything that we have gone over tonight. All right, wish you guys all the best. Take care, and I'll see you next week.